What is already presented here, back with another Honkai Star Oak guide, and today I'm here with the who you should pick with the upcoming anniversary free selector, where we are able to get a free of that gold thing that I can't remember the name of on the top of my head, and we are actually able to use it on picking Luocha or Ruan Mei, or a standard character I guess, but in this video I'm only going to be talking about those two because why would you pick a standard character over these? So in this video again I will be talking about who you should pick. I will be talking about what their current roles in the meta are, how well they're holding up. I'll also briefly be going over their early eidolons, so E1 and E2 mainly, just in case you already own them and you're thinking of who you want to get a dupe for. And then I'll be giving some scenarios on whether you should pick Luocha or Ruan Mei. So it's mainly going to be if this scenario ties to you mainly, then pick this character instead. So that's how this video will go. Before I get to the video, if you guys found the video helpful in any way, shape, or form, drop a like would be greatly appreciated. If you're new and haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe and turn on the bell icon for future videos like this, along with all other types of Star Oak content and guides. And let's get straight into the video. So first, let's talk about Luocha. So Luocha was the first premium sustain we did get in the game, and he actually does hold up relatively well. He does have one of, if not the highest healing output to this day. The only problem is, as time went on, we did end up getting healers like Huohuo and Lingsha and Gallagher, who did provide more than just healing, as they healed plenty enough, and they also did actually end up providing buffs. Like Huohuo gave a massive 40% increase to attack and also 20% of the character's max energy, which is just super valuable. Gallagher also had a similar offensive healing that he did provide, and he healed enough. He was also a 4-star, so he's infinitely more accessible and was also given out for free at some points in events. And on top of that, he made enemies take more break damage, which when he released wasn't a big thing, but shortly after break meta did become a thing. And then when we got Lingsha, it was practically just a 5-star Gallagher. She didn't have offensive healing, but she still healed way more when she did act, and she also had a better version of the break damage enemies take increase, which, you know, got amplified by her early eidolons and her Lycon and such. So Luocha really just became this character that healed a lot but didn't really have priority because he didn't buff at all or provide a debuff that really was any helpful. The only thing Luocha did provide is his ult removed a buff from all enemies, but that really didn't matter because it was never really a buff you'd go to remove, so the buff strip was practically just whatever. So for the longest time, Luocha really wasn't a character that most people would want to consider, because if you were gonna get him, you might as well get one of the other three instead, and by get is Lingsha or Huohuo, and then if you had Gallagher, which you would in that case, you would just build him. There really just wasn't a place where Luocha would shine well. The only place was really something like Blade, but the other healers just, you know, sustained effectively enough. But now we are getting to a point where we have gotten HP drainers, so we have Mayday, who's a draining HP type DPS like Blade, but he drains way more. The thing about him though is he does have revives that he is able to abuse in battle, and that's why sustainless is so good with him. And you really don't need a super powerful sustain to keep him alive, because he is able to revive up to 3 times, which is a lot, by the way. That's a big thing to consider, is he can revive 3 times, and his ultimate also restores his HP by a little bit, so that's another thing. So someone like Luocha, where he just has super high healing, doesn't really matter because it doesn't do too much there. And a smaller healer that, you know, isn't as crazy, you could still just use one of the other 3. They would be a better option to just sub into that team, and so you didn't really have to use your summons on someone like Luocha at all. Next one we are getting is Castress, who actually drains the entire team's HP, where Luocha does actually get more value because he still has one of the highest outputs of healing in the game, so he's constantly able to keep your team alive with the amount she does drain, as again his healing output is very high. On top of that, the way Castress works is you do want to try to heal her actual summon as much as possible so it can stay up and use its attack even more. And so someone like Luocha does heal enough to actually suffice that and get the dragon to perform very well at higher amounts of HP. The only other one that can really contest him there is Gallagher, but at this point we have so many teams that Gallagher is used on. Someone like Luocha actually is a really good consideration. Huohuo in this case is very much wasted with Castress because her energy buff is useless, because Castress has a unique energy and she is also not a attack scaler. She is an HP scaler, so Huohuo's buff and energy gain buff is useless. And so in these cases, Luocha actually does perform very well. And if you are running a team, which is actually going to be pretty common, of a dual hyper carry with Mayday and actually Castress, where HP drain on Mayday is going to be super high, Castress is also draining everyone's team, Luocha is one of the only characters that is going to heal you enough to offset that HP drain. So if you are someone going for that, that is where you could actually consider that. Briefly talking about his early dupes, his E1 is just a 20% attack increase when his zone is up. Kind of whatever now, it's really not good, especially on his best team nowadays, which is going to be HP related scalers, so attack is wasted. And his E2 I think is pretty bad because it is counterintuitive with the characters he is best with, as his healing actually does now give an increased outgoing healing, which is good, but if he does heal someone that has 50% or higher HP, they will gain a shield, which is really bad because these HP drainers, Blade, Mayday, and Castress want to drain HP, so they want to get hit to drain that HP because that counts. So in short, they want to lose HP. What does shield do? It will take the shield instead, so it actually doesn't count. That's why someone like Aventurine isn't as good with a HP drainers as a healer would be. So E2 is very counterintuitive. So if you have an E1 Luocha, E2 may be very counterintuitive. Now talking about Ruan Mei. So Ruan Mei is still a very prominent character, once regarded as the must-have, which I did agree. When the earlier times of Starro, when she came out practically the entirety of 2.x, she was one of the must-have characters. If you didn't really have her, it was kind of like, why would you not get her? Nowadays, it isn't as much so. She's still really good and brings a ton of value, but she isn't much of a must-have character as she used to be. She is a character that works practically on every single team, which is crazy to think about, but she does excel in break teams. Her buffs are really good for everyone. Weakness break efficiency, gives everyone damage dealt, gives everyone all-type res pen, and actually is able to trigger a rebreak when enemies do recover, and also gives everyone speed. So on a faster side character, the 10% speed she does give is going to be great. Her buffs to this day is very universal. You can use her on a follow-up team, you can use her on a dot team, you will mainly use her on a break team because that's where she excels, and she actually does work with these HP drainers. It's a bit iffy because you don't want to break enemies, and with the weakness break efficiency she does give, might have a bit of an issue where she does actually end up helping you break them, and when you are running an HP drainer, you don't want to break since you want enemies to actually attack you, so that's a bit counterintuitive there. But the actual buffs and the damage she does provide is very much making up for it. A lot easier to talk about her place in the meta as opposed to Luocha, because Luocha had this whole up and down, while Ruan Mei has just constantly been up. She was the best when she came out. She is tied for the best, kind of. You could argue a bit below now, especially with all the characters we have now, like Robin, Tribby, you know, Sunday in his cases. All the buffs still super universal. You can slaughter her in any team and she'll be great. Excels in break teams. Any team that doesn't have a Ruan Mei that is break related, so Boot Hill, Rappa, and Firefly. If you don't have Ruan Mei, you'll have a significant drop off as opposed to having Ruan Mei. Those teams will always be best if they do have Ruan Mei because her value is just perfect there. That's where she does excel, but again, you could put her on a Feixiao follow-up team. You could put her on a dot team where she's one of the best for there as well. You can put her on a generic crit DPS team. She works still just anywhere. And when it comes to her early dupes, she still definitely does have one of the best E1s in the game that does actually give everyone 20% defense ignore when her ultimate is up. So defense ignore, it gets stronger as the higher value does go up. So if you pair it with other sources of defense ignore, the E1 becomes so much more valuable, but a 20% on its own is still very nice. Again, is mostly ideal for break characters because defense ignore is one of the best sources of damage increases they can get, and break characters have a lot of defense ignore access. But again, E1 in general is a fantastic idol just because 20% defense ignore for free will always be good. When it comes to her E2 on the other hand, it's not as good, but it's still fine. It gives 40% attack to everyone on your team when dealing damage to enemies that are weakness broken. On break teams outside of Firefly, and this is assuming you don't already have the cap. With Firefly, you can kind of feel it if you don't have the cap because she's able to convert that to break effect. With the others, someone like Buto can kind of feel it, but it's practically whatever. Rappa as well, but you really won't feel it. It's not really a crazy dupe at all. It works well if you're on a other team such as a Feixiao break team or a generic crit DPS team or a dot team where you do break the enemies, and you actually will be able to feel that 40% attack because those are attack scaling characters. So if they are an actual attack scaling character, they will benefit from it. If they're an HP scaling character on the other hand, or they're a break characters won't really feel it at all. Again, besides actual conversion from Firefly and her trace with that, they won't really feel it on the other hand. And then when they're coming to an HP scaling character, they won't feel it either because they scale off HP. So E1, fantastic. E2, not so much. So now, talking about whether you should actually go ahead and pick Luocha or Ruan Mei. For most people, I definitely would recommend picking Ruan Mei just because the value she does bring is significantly higher, as she is just a great slot-in on a lot of teams. And if you're someone that wants to get into break, then she is definitely going to be a must-have. But in the case where you don't really have break and you don't really need a slot-in such as Ruan Mei, but you do need another sustain, Luocha is still a fantastic option as a general sustain just because he heals so much. He just doesn't have as much value as the others because he doesn't really bring buffs. But once again, his healing is going to let you not die, so that's a fantastic thing to consider. And if you're someone that did summon for Meta, you're going to summon for Castris, maybe you want to run the hyper carry team of both of them, or you just want to use Luocha as a general sustain for either or, he is still going to be a good option you can't pick just because he is just a general good sustain to have for your account. Now, if you have maybe both and you are considering a dupe, I 100% in that case would go for Ruan Mei Z1. The 20% defense ignore in her ult is infinitely more valuable than the mere 20% attack that Luocha gains in his zone. The defense ignore is just way more valuable on every team, especially on break teams, but in any team that gets more defense ignore access, so this plus maybe something like Sunday E1, or on a break team you have the Relics set, or maybe one of their early dupes, stacking up the defense ignore is going to help you significantly more than a 20% attack increase of Luocha. And as I mentioned, Luocha's best teams are with these HP scaling characters that drain a lot of HP and want to offset it, where the attack buff definitely would not help at all. When it comes to getting either or's E2, that kind of does also depend. I also would lean more to Ruan Mei's, just because, as I mentioned, Luocha's best teams is with those HP drainers and HP scalers where the shield would genuinely just grief them. Whereas Ruan Mei, it doesn't bring you a downside. Even if you can't feel the attack buff, you still are getting a buff. It's useless with HP scalers, as I mentioned, so it's not going to actively grief you though. You're just getting a free stat that, even if it doesn't help, it's not like it's giving you a shield where it would offset the HP drain you would get, which would genuinely not help you at all, and also actively go against how the kit works. The only time I would recommend Luocha's E2 over Ruan Mei's E2 is if you are planning to use Luocha on a team that doesn't actually regard one of the HP scalers. So if you're using him as a general sustain and you want to use him with another kind of DPS that doesn't need HP training, in that case you can actually opt to get it because it's just a free shield at that point. It's not going to grief you just because you're not trying to lose HP, so it's just extra protection in that case. So in that case, I would actually pick Luocha's E2 over Ruan Mei's E2, but in every other case, I would pick Ruan Mei's E2 over Luocha's E2. So brief recap, I mainly recommend Ruan Mei more, but if you maybe already have her, maybe already have her E1, or you don't really have a need for her to be a slot in anywhere and you don't really run break, and you may need a sustain, then Luocha is going to be a better pick in that case. And when it does come to their early Eidolons, I practically always would recommend Ruan Mei E1 over Luocha's E1, as a defense ignore is just significantly more valuable. And then E2s, mainly Ruan Mei's E2 will be better, but if you are using Luocha on non-HP drainer teams, and you're just using him as a general sustain with other DPSs that want to just be healed and protected, then his E2 could be an option you could get. But again, if you do get it, it's going to significantly lower your usage of him on HP draining characters if you ever do end up deciding to use him with them, just because the shield is going to actively not help. So if that's not a problem, then I would actually go ahead and get Luocha's E2 over Ruan Mei's E2, but in any other case, I would give Ruan Mei's E2 for the most part. And if that is a video, that is who you should pick, giving you multiple scenarios on whether you should pick Luocha or Ruan Mei, their E1 or their E2. Also talking about both of the characters and their roles in the actual current meta, and how it's kind of evolved a bit over the years. Once again, hope you guys found the video helpful. If you did, dropping a like would be greatly appreciated. If you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe and tell the bell icon for future videos like this, along with all other types of Star content. Yep, peace out.